We have our special guest. He's on the phone right now, and he is the voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Tim Alcorn. What's up, Tim?
Hey, it's good to talk to you guys. Hope you're doing well and staying safe.
Absolutely. Hopefully this is almost over, Tim.
Well, I think we got a long ways to go, but we'll let the scientists and medical professionals and those who know a lot more than we do lead the way. But yeah, hopefully we've got a bright road ahead.
Oh, we can only hope. Well, Tim, I want to know, my first question for you is, what do you think about The Last Dance? I mean, this has been a great documentary. Yesterday it was the third and fourth episode. I thought it was very impressive, very well drawn, and really, you get to learn a lot about Phil Jackson, Jerry Krause. What did you think about this documentary so far?
Well, I think it's been terrific. And when you have the amount of information and the amount of footage they have, it allows you to go through an entire 10-hour series. I mean, that's really in-depth. And I'm an older guy, so I lived through a lot of this. I know last night was the shot, as we call it here in Cleveland, when Michael Jordan knocked out the Cavaliers. And so that still gets talked about to this day. And when Jordan hit that shot over Craig Elo, I was actually sitting behind that basket in the media section. And one of these days, I'm going to slow that thing down, that famous highlight, and look for myself. But no, it has been so well done. And obviously, to get a behind-the-scenes look, as folks have been able to see here for, 2 Sundays now, last Sunday and last night, I think it has been tremendous.
Tim, moving on to the current Cavaliers, it was a big thing with at the beginning of the season with John Beilein and him and the Cavs with the young players. They had a scuffle. Are you surprised Beilein resigned quickly like he did? And also, are you surprised a former college coach and a good college coach at Michigan had trouble with young players?
Well, to answer your first question first, was I surprised that he resigned when he did? Yeah, I think everybody was. He had been on the job less than a year, and certainly I think Coach Beilein knew the situation that he was inheriting once he came on board. But that being said, to say you understand it is a lot different than having to go through it. And John Beilein is a Class A person. He's a Class A coach. But I think his background and his resume is such that he is so used to winning, he found it difficult, number one, to transition to the NBA just as far as the number of games and the lack of practices. And number two, going through a rebuilding, retooling type of process like the Cavaliers are going through. So, yeah, I was surprised. And then number two, as far as college to NBA, I think a lot of coaches have had that problem. They say, they meaning the coaches, oh, I can handle this. Coaching basketball is coaching basketball, but most of them have found out it's a lot different. Not just, the veteran guys who are older, they're not college age. And as I alluded to earlier, the limited number of practices you have once the season gets going, that schedule is unrelenting. The games just keep coming, and you don't have a lot of practice time in between. And I think for a young basketball team, that presents challenges. And for a coach coming from the college background that John Beilein came from, that was a very, very challenging adjustment.
We are talking to the voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Tim Alcorn. Tim, the roster, and Andre Drummond is one of the best rebounders in the league, one of the best big men in the league. What were your thoughts when the Cleveland Cavaliers made that trade and brought in Andre Drummond?
Well, first of all, it was a no-brainer as far as acquiring Andre Drummond for what the Cavaliers had to give up. And again, that's not a knock on John Henson or Brandon Knight, two terrific guys, and they were really good teammates and true professionals, but they certainly were not in the Cavaliers' plans, and they were on expiring contracts and so forth. So to give those two guys up along with a second-round draft choice for a perennial all-star center, I mean, that's a no-brainer. I think one of the disappointing things as far as the league coming to a halt as it did was J.B. Bickerstaff, now the head coach of the Cavaliers, he really didn't have an opportunity to see what he could do with Andre Drummond as far as different lineup combinations and that sort of thing. So, but it was a great deal at the time that it happened. When the NBA starts back up again, and we certainly hope that happens, then hopefully J.B. Bickerstaff is going to have an opportunity to see what Andre Drummond can add to this lineup, because his resume and certainly his stat sheet, it speaks for itself.
There were stories coming out from Cleveland over, in the last couple of months that Kevin Love wants out of Cleveland. There were stories coming out in L.A. that L.A. was going to try to make a trade at the trade deadline for Kevin Love because he fit very, very well with LeBron James in Cleveland when they won the title. What are your thoughts on Kevin Love? Do you think he wants to be there, or do you think he wants to be traded?
Well, believe me, those conversations are well above my pay grade. I think conversations are always happening with GMs in the NBA. That's part of their job. They have to do that. If not, they're not doing their due diligence. So how many of those conversations took place or how in-depth those conversations went, I don't know. I can only say that Kevin Love has been the consummate professional this year with the Cavaliers. His effort has spoken for itself. He's averaging pretty close to a double-double every night. So his effort has been there. His professionalism has been there. And again, when the trade discussions took place, I'm sure that dialogue was healthy, but you're not doing your job as a GM, number one, if you don't pick up the phone when people call, and perhaps on the other side, you're not doing your job if you don't dial somebody else to inquire as to the availability of a player. I think that happens all the time.
We are talking to the voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Tim Alcorn.
Tim, dealing with Kyrie Irving now, obviously he was with the Cavaliers for a long time when LeBron was there and even before LeBron was there. And kind of at the end of his Cavs career into now, we've seen a lot of antics that have always been talked about. Are you surprised this drama has gotten to the level that it has over the last maybe 5 years or so?
Well, number one, I wasn't working for the Cavaliers when Kyrie was playing here. I was working for a radio station that was a Cavaliers affiliate. So I certainly had covered Kyrie Irving, but not on that day-to-day basis as the play-by-play guy. This is my first year as the play-by-play guy. But Kyrie is one very unique individual. He says some things and he does some things that'll really make you scratch your head sometimes. His basketball playing ability is beyond question. I mean, he is just a terrific player, but sometimes it's a little more than that, as they found out in Boston and in your neck of the woods in Brooklyn, as far as what he would say for what he would do that would raise eyebrows. So he's a unique character in that locker room, and I think he pretty much made it known when he left Cleveland that he kind of wanted to be the guy, to be the alpha male on a team. And when he got to Boston, he found out it's not as easy, and it certainly may not be the position that everybody is designed to be put in. So he's a very intriguing guy. His basketball ability is just outstanding.
Tim, what are your thoughts of LeBron James? I mean, he brought a championship home to Cleveland. I know you were there. You weren't the play-by-play guy. But the greatness of what he gave to the Cleveland Cavaliers coming back from Miami. He left Cleveland. They were burning his jersey. Then he went to Miami. He won 2 titles in Miami. And then he went back to Cleveland because he wanted to bring a title to Cleveland because Cleveland hasn't seen a championship in over 50 years. What did he bring to the Cleveland Cavaliers when he brought that championship home?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I mean, and it would take quite a while to answer. I mean, there's been books written about it. But the long and short of it is, I'll simply say that LeBron James delivered. He came back to Miami, came back to Cleveland from Miami, and in the initial letter that he wrote in Sports Illustrated, he said, my desire is to bring a championship to Cleveland. And he delivered, and especially the way that they came through in 2016, being the only NBA team to come back from a 3-1 deficit, winning games 5 and 7 on the road in Golden State. I think years from now, decades from now, as much as we marvel at that now, we're just going to be astonished by it once it really gets into history, because he basically carried that team on his back. He delivered a promise that really was pressure-packed. And, again, the first time he left, it certainly didn't go over well, but not that fans were happy to see him leave the second time, but he delivered that championship to Cleveland as he promised, and his basketball playing ability, he'll go down as one of the greatest ever. And certainly, he may be in L.A. now, but he's an Akron/Cleveland guy, and I think he'll always have a connection with this fan base and with this city.